It's no secret that I'm a fan of Armored Trooper Votoms, so being the fan that I am, I decided to see if Ryusuke Takahashi did anything else I might like, which brings me today to today's video about a little show he did in 1984 going by the name of Panzer World Galient. Panzer World Galient asks us a very simple question, a question that's been plaguing mankind for centuries. And that question is, what would happen if you went back in time with an army of mechs and then just dropped them on top of medieval England? The answer is Panzer World Galient, a show that takes that idea and runs with it for an entire 25 episodes. Panzer World Galient opens with our main villain Martel, an obvious Darth Vader stand-in who decides to attack the entire planet with mechs that he digs out of the ground just for the fun of it. Our young hero of this story is Prince Joldy, but his friends call him Jojo. Narrowly smuggled out of his home as a baby when the crotch laser centaur robots attack, he's raised by his newly adopted grandfather, one of the knights that served the kingdom in the opening episode. Raising him in the ways of the knight, he hopes Jojo will one day take down Martel once and for all and reclaim his birthright by taking his place as the rightful ruler of planet Arst. 12 years of searching and training happen in the blink of an eye, and the plot just kind of hands Jojo his new mech. And all because they offhandedly mentioned that they were looking for it to a little girl who happened to be at their campfire listening to their story at the time. It turns out nobody believed her because she heard the story from an old man. But sometimes you need to listen to old people, because every once in a while, they know where a secret robot might be. And thus begins JoJo's bizarre adventure. JoJo's Mech Galient is essentially what would happen if you took an AT from Armored Trooper Votoms, painted it red, and made it way, way bigger. But what's really interesting about the mechs in this series isn't their size, it's the way that they fight. Most mecha shows do their fighting with rocket launchers and laser beams, but all the mechs in this show, which they call Panzers, fight with giant axes and swords instead. One mech even has a drill sword as its main weapon, and I have to admit, I wish it had gotten more screen time because it quickly became one of my favorite mechs in the entire show. Galient whirs and clicks just like an AT, and has the same plug-in helmet wires that the mechs in Armored Trooper Votoms did too. Ryusuke Takahashi must have been really pressed for ideas on characters though, because the supporting cast includes Window, a thief that really doesn't do much stealing, and he may as well be Vanilla from Armored Trooper Votoms under a different name, since he shares the exact same voice actor from that series. And they even dressed up Kiriko from Armored Trooper Votoms in some knight armor, hoping we wouldn't notice it's the exact same character. Galient mainly fights with a combination sword whip that separates into segments, and I wouldn't be surprised if the creators of the Soul Calibur video game series watched Galient at some point. Coincidentally, that video game had a lot of knights in it too. One detail I enjoyed about Panzer World Galient was how day and night are paid attention to really well on this anime. Each episode usually has at least one night scene with base camps and strategy planning taking place, and it's nice to see entire episodes take place in the dark. When it does get dark though, half the time I can't even tell what I'm looking at. I don't know if it's the release I've got or a problem with the source material, but it's really hard to tell what's going on sometimes, and I had to turn the contrast way up just to make out certain scenes. Another thing I didn't care for was our hero. I couldn't care about JoJo as a character at all. Every word that comes out of the kid's mouth is a demand. Give me back my mom. Let me out of this prison cell. Stop fighting me with your giant space robot. Coming-of-age stories are usually fine, but this is more of the I'm 12 years old and have no personality kind of kid. I know I shouldn't expect so much from a 12-year-old, but it came off as boring and selfish in the few scenes where he actually has an opinion about what's going on. The story is nothing really exceptional either, and it's not helped at all by the pacing. It's an entire 16 episodes until they introduce all the main characters, and it was really nice of them to wait 20 episodes before telling us what the main villain's plans and motivations are. Even his henchmen don't fully know what their leader's endgame is, and that's pretty ridiculous considering some of these guys have been following the exact same man for over 20 years. And I hate to say it, but the animation also really shows its age. It picks up a little bit towards the end, but coupled with the really dark night scenes and bad contrast, this would have been a perfect show to get remastered on Blu-ray so we can actually see what we're looking at. Just last year, Panzer World Galient was featured for the first time in a Super Robot Wars game on the 3DS, so hopefully after all these years they're finally trying to drum up some interest in this series. Sadly for Galient, I just don't see that happening. I wish I had known this when I started, but Galient was so unpopular with kids at the time that it was cancelled midway through production, leaving us with a rushed ending that, well, just sort of ends. Just as the series was starting to get a little bit better too. What a shame. Maybe that was for the better though. I tried watching this once a week just to see what it would have been like back in 1984, and I didn't care what was going to happen next episode until an entire 16 episodes in. And that's a telltale sign something has seriously gone wrong. I can't blame the kids for not liking this either. The pacing is much too slow, and kids don't want to watch spacemen in clean suits talk about space politics. It's the same kind of thing that ruined the 2000 Star Wars movies. Nobody wants any of that, just get to the robot fighting. Speaking of Star Wars, Galient has this vague Star Wars-y vibe going for it the entire show, and I could swear I've seen these water-powered medical pods before, but it's been a while, so maybe that was just Dragon Ball Z. Let me list off a few of them, and you can tell me if I'm just seeing things. Martel looks like Darth Vader, he has his own army of stormtroopers, a Death Star shows up towards the end. His vehicles look like sandcrawlers, you've got your obligatory join the dark side speech thrown in there, and JoJo's mother also gets frozen in carbonite. Normally, I would say that's a spoiler, but they make sure you know that right there in the opening, and then they expect you to be surprised about it when it gets mentioned in the show. At one point they even tell you a character is gonna die in an episode preview. I know it's foreshadowed, but that's a really bad way to keep people surprised. I also have to mention that Galient received 3 OVAs after the series cancellation. The first 2 are clip shows that try to condense Galient into a better paced 2 OVA series, so if you're interested in this show, that would probably be your best bet since it's only 2 hours out of your time instead of the 8 it would take you to watch the entire show. The third OVA, however, is a reimagining of the entire series, and it tries to redo everything with the same characters, only this time in new roles and situations. Maybe I'll get to that one of these days. For all of its faults, it wasn't all bad. Panzerworld Galient has some cool mech designs, and the Centaur robots are now my favorite grunt mech of all time. The characters act like real people, even if they're a little boring, and Martel is easily one of my favorite villains now. The stuff he does towards the end almost makes me want to recommend this series, but with its bad pacing, stilted animation, and unfinished ending, I give this a middling 2.5 stars out of 5. I just can't recommend it. That intro and ending music though, man oh man, is that some good stuff.
I never cared where I really belonged and what I could do for my land. But now I see I am completely grown. I'll forever be where I stand, 'cause I'm the man who adored this land. To sacrifice my life